Hemp, 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 hooray, hemp, 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 hooray. Another hemp episode. Oh my God. And this is the best one yet. Oh, buckle your fucking seatbelts because this is incredible. You're going to want to go out and share this with all your, matter of fact, pause right now and call all your friends and say, look, dude, I got like thousands of dollars worth of free legal advice on the real dirt today. You got to download this episode where I speak to part of the Vicente Sederberg Hemp crew. Man, I get world-class information. I get information that people want to pay for but can't because, people at Vicente Sederberg are so busy. It's hard for clients to get, in to talk to the top level people. But man, I talked to two of the top level people today there at the Real Dirt. Shaun Hauser, she leads the hemp team there. And we talk all about the possibilities of hemp. Man, it is exploding like it has never exploded before. The possibilities, the opportunities for people they've never been like this. Almost anybody can get in the hemp industry right now in some form or fashion. If you want to be a small guy and grow it, you can do it. If you want to be a big guy and grow it, you can do it. If you want to make some homespun products, you can do it. If you want to sell that shit on Amazon, you can do that. If you want to market it, you can do that. Man, if you want to sell equipment to hemp farmers, you can do that. If you want to co-package stuff to other hemp people in CBD, man, it is incredible at the opportunity. Hemp is going to be in everything, toothpaste to deodorant, to it's already in dog food. It's already in dog products like pet products like CBD. Is really going to fuel this overall deficiency that most of the country and world has in cannabinoids. We are endocannabinoid deficient in this country as well as other places. And I believe that CBD is going to help apply those cannabinoids. But that's just me. I think other people would agree. Like I said, this episode is incredible. It will be one of my most downloaded episodes. Get your paper and pen. I normally tell you to fire up a large joint, but you're going to want to concentrate on this one. So fire up a small joint at the beginning and a large joint at the end and think about it all. It's amazing, and it's all here on The Real Dirt. If you love this episode or want to find out more for us, check us out on the Real Dirt podcast on iTunes. Look for us, realdirt.com. Instagram, join, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. And that's only going to foster hemp and cannabis and ganja throughout the world. So sit back and enjoy this episode. Go to school. Yeah. Once again, you have reached The Real Dirt with Chip Baker. And on today's Dirt, I have a very special episode. I have the Vicente Sederberg Hemp division. That's right. The whole division, or at least portion of it, is here with me. And I also have my trusty co-host, Justin Jones. Say hello, Justin.
All right. Hello. Thanks for having me today, Chip.
With me today, I have the illustrious Shaun Hauser. She's partner and chair of the Hemp and Cannabinoid Practice Group at Vicente Sederberg. Hey, Shaun.
Hey, Chip. Thanks for having me back.
I know. I'm glad you got you back. Hey, listen, I'll just apologize openly on air to the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that listen to this that me and Shaun had an episode once before and I lost it.
But everything's totally different now. So
everything is totally different now. So it's so much better. But, you know, I've also had...
Are those missing files?
I know, and they might show up one day.
All right. Just wanted to make sure we know what we're dealing with.
They might show up one day. You know, make sure I'm recording as we speak here just because we've had that problem in the past. Hey, I also have Andrew Livingston here. Andrew is the Director of Economics and Research at Vicente Sederberg.
It's wonderful to be back on the dirt.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. You were one of the first podcasts that we did here at The Real Dirt, Andrew.
Yeah, good to be able to see how your podcast has evolved and grown, and you've got awesome other guests, and now I get to be on with 4 friends, I guess 3 friends, including me. Should be a good time. We'll nerd out on cannabis and hemp. markets and the like.
The episode we had, you had so many great predictions, and we spoke about this recently, that have come true. The overabundance in the Colorado and the Oregon market, I believe you predicted for 2018, and that really did come true. And there were many others. So if you're interested in those predictions and how they turned out, listen to the Andrew Livingston episode. So we are here to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is, anybody?
Cannabis.
You're right, Justin. That's why Justin Jones been my co-host for the past several episodes, as he knows me so well. Cannabis and hemp. Cannabis is hemp. Hemp is legal now, Shaun.
Yeah, it took Mitch McConnell, but we got here.
I mean, I don't care what it took. At the end of the day, the job's done. We are excited about federally legal hemp, and you've been working with hemp and cannabis for many years here, Shaun. How has the new federal legalization changed your job or changed your phone calls?
Well, it's definitely made the frequency in calls increase, but it's also, really allowed people to have national, international businesses, and a lot of the operators, bigger companies who weren't able to enter the cannabis space for the federal illegality reason are able to enter the hemp space. And just because the law is new and it's evolving on the federal and state level, there's just a lot of issues to talk about and things changing. So kind of a state-by-state patchwork and helping folks navigate the laws.
Well, the past couple of episodes, me and Justin have spoken to a hemp farmer. We've spoken to a seed supplier. Everybody's excited about it on many different levels. Since you are the authority in the room, tell us what the Farm Bill of 2018 really did for hemp.
So I guess most importantly, what the Farm Bill did for hemp is it removed it from the Controlled Substances Act. So it, instead of regulating the production of the cannabis plant under drug laws, it shifted the regulation under agricultural laws and amended 6 federal laws so that hemp is regulated like an agricultural commodity under the purview of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and not the DEA.
So it's just like corn.
Right.
Just like corn.
Alfalfa.
Were Colorado and Oregon already acting that way, right? I mean, on a state level, they had removed it from regulation on the policing side and given it to the Department of Agriculture.
So we haven't been able to legally grow hemp in the United States for decades, and we were behind really every other industrialized country on that front. And in 2014, the Obama administration, for the first time, removed barriers and allowed U.S. production, but it was limited. And the 2014 Farm Bill allowed states to have really agricultural pilot programs where they could do research, and it left a lot of authority to the states to determine what was allowed. So the more progressive states like Colorado, where we actually put a provision legalizing hemp in the Amendment 64, legalizing marijuana in Oregon, and North Dakota and a few others had protections for hemp on the state level long before even the 2014 Farm Bill. But under the 2014 Farm Bill, there were over 30 states with agricultural pilot programs. And when we got into 2018 Farm Bill, there were at least 40 states with some form of a hemp law or that have removed barriers to production. So really now the majority of the U.S. can grow hemp. To your question, Chip, also one of the important things to note about the 2018 Farm Bill is it still gives a lot of authority to states. It's sort of like healthcare where it's shared federal state programming. So states have the authority to adopt their own plans. They can be more restrictive than the federal plan as long as they don't prohibit transport across state lines.
Yeah, we hear about it in Oregon every day right now because there's a group that's sitting in Idaho with a truckload from Oregon, from Portland. So it's scary.
It is scary.
So let's back up the story. For those of you who don't know, in January, beginning of January, a semi-truckload of hemp was stopped in Oklahoma.
Yep.
A semi-truckload of hemp was stopped in Oklahoma, and they suspected it of being marijuana. Right. So they arrested several people. They kept several people in jail for a month or more. They finally released those people recently. But the hemp tested over 0.3.
0.4.
So barely over.
0.4.
Because 0.4 cannabis is going to get you like super, super high.
I know. I want.
Give me that good 0.4.
The 0.4.
That good 0.4.
You got any 0.4, Chip?
Yeah, totally.
This 0.3 stuff isn't doing it anymore.
Totally.
And also, I mean, the hemp was coming from legal state to legal state.
Colorado,
Oregon to Colorado.
They have hemp licenses, everything. You know, it was.
Oklahoma's a legal state.
Yeah.
Kentucky's a legal state.
So there's people with that same situation in Nevada sitting in jail. We got Oklahoma. We know Idaho. You know, the issue is, you know, I was just involved with a project getting some plants from Western Colorado to Oregon to start some seed breeding things. And the guys were strategically driving, you know, not in Idaho and, you know, trying to get, even out of Nevada as fast as possible and in California, you know, and this is Farm Bill's passed. This is totally legal, but the plant looks exactly the same. And so if a state like Idaho says that's a marijuana plant, you're going to prison, you know, they're not going to grow that thing and flower it out to find out whether it was THC or whether it's CBD, right? So
Idaho is actually the one state without a marijuana or hemp law.
Yep.
It's the solo one. But
so it's
stuck in Idaho right now. So it's stuck in Idaho. That this is haven't followed it closely.
7,000 pounds and
7,000 pounds. It's tested hot. We call it. We call it hot. Here, lingo.
It's over.
Lingo drop. Hemp is 0.3 THC, and if it's over 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.7, we call it hot.
Right, and there's another issue involved there is the state of Oregon just changed their testing law, so they were only testing for Delta-9 and not total THC. So all Oregon hemp
like
that is approved, and you're good to go on that in Oregon, could be hot as soon as it leaves the state, even though just because of that. Now, I think they've changed it very recently, and they're testing for total THC for the hemp so that, you know, you're not leaving a little part off. But biomass is so big. What are you guys seeing on the legal side of things that we could do to protect these farmers with so much material? They try to grind it down and homogenize it, but, you know, we don't want this to happen where someone's really doing this right and there's some weird thing in a state.
Which is what's happening. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think on the regulatory side, we have to work with states and, you know, hopefully, and I think the USDA will address this in rulemaking, but to have testing standards and, you know, variances so that if it tests over 0.3, perhaps it's not illegal. There's maybe 0.3 to 1%, and that's precedent in other countries. And I think a lot of the confusion is around the states, you know, state departments of agriculture. This is their first go around with hemp. They don't understand how to regulate a crop that has this THC issue.
Yeah.
And there's no federal rules yet. And, you know, they're all looking at the issue, but there's so much education needed in the hemp space, particularly on the regulatory and enforcement level.
So how is the federal government going to guarantee this interstate commerce?
I mean, right now the USDA is engaging in its rulemaking to determine the minimum standards that states are going to have to comply with, and that will likely address some sort of requirements for transportation. Like you might have to have a manifest, and maybe similar to things like marijuana and your testing, your certificate of analysis and things like that. Until they do so, it's really incumbent on states to adopt some reasonable requirements for their businesses. But the argument that some of these Idaho, you know, Oklahoma locals are making are that the transportation protection in the 2018 Farm Bill isn't in effect yet because the USDA hasn't made its rules. And that's going to come down to the case law.
Well, and you know, we all know as we look at this beautiful hemp plant that looks just like all the plants we see in our recreational cannabis grows here in Colorado and our medical grows. But, you know, at the end of the day, when, you know, somebody is going to put a bunch of private market high THC cannabis in a truck and put a couple of totes of hemp on the back and try to pull something off. So
that wasn't me. I didn't do that.
No, I know it wasn't you. It was that other guy. But, you know, we also got to address that system that the local police can actually log in and see that there's a shipment here. It should be this big, have this many totes. There's an RFID tag on each tote that can, you know, identify it. So the paperwork can't be faked. And you know, there's an outlet there. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like let's just recognize for a second that we have trouble in the United States even quantifying the number of murders that have occurred across the United States, right? Small police offices and sheriff's offices, particularly in really small town rural areas that you have to drive through if you're trying to transport Kentucky hemp to Oregon or Colorado, are not really the type of people and don't have the type of technological infrastructure in order to be able to hook up into a national up-to-date system that allows for these sorts of transports. And I mean, even if we were to have that, let's not forget that like these sorts of shipments are going to be occurring all the time.
Yep.
And if you don't want to wait for like 3 days for the system to, recognize that the fact that, okay, now your certificate of analysis from your testing lab has been loaded in. Okay, maybe it wasn't loaded in, or like, these people's internet goes down on certain things, or even like the cops just like don't recognize. So I love the idea of some sort of tech infrastructure. And I think that now that we live in a tech age, so many of us look to that as the solution. But it might be something a lot more simplistic, like some sort of tax stamp and a sealed container with tamper-evident tape.
Yep.
And
what about, is anybody using the rail system right now? How's that? Have you heard much about people shipping on rail, and is there any protections that get you?
I haven't heard many folks shipping on rail. What's interesting is that there was
nobody's getting caught anyway.
Okay.
I'm sure it's happening. I haven't had folks really talk about shipping that way. But what's interesting is that maybe a safe way to ship right now is through just the U.S. Postal Service, because there is court precedent that they can't seize hemp that's going from legal state to legal state. They tried to do it before, got sued, and got shut down. Yeah. So the mail might be a good bet until
maybe hemp will save the USPS. Wow. What about that?
So the USPS can start transporting cannabis. That's a new one for them. I know they've never done that before.
Yeah, but I mean, on a package size, it's going to be pretty expensive to get that priority
just a bunch
mail
of flat rate boxes, man.
5,000 pounds of hemp. I mean, yeah. Maybe if you turn it into distillate, and I think this is something that is interesting we should talk about, because there may actually be less risk if you are done some sort of processing. And you're
that's why they were shipping
hemp
it from Kentucky to Colorado, though,
because they want it.
Well, the process it. That's part of the issue, is that since Colorado's like the first one to build and Oregon was behind it, that's where the most of the processors are. That's where the money came. The infrastructure was built out. So, yeah, you're right. All this product needs remediated all the way through the process. The biomass is going to go, the crude's going to get remediated. You're going to take it to whatever other product that has to be at a no detect level. Yeah. Right now, there's a hot run that I'm seeing in Oregon on all things non-detect, because people are just don't want to necessarily, transport crude out of state because it's hot, and all these things. So
we've just got to figure it out, because the interstate transport piece is not going to go away. States are going to have their own programs. Some states aren't going to allow processing. Some states aren't going to allow cultivation. And if we're going to compete with every other country who has a hemp economy, we're going to need to build a U.S. infrastructure and supply chains. And
the dry counties in Texas still let the beer trucks drive through to the next county, right? Or no?
Yeah, they do.
They don't have to drive around, right? They go right on through. They're not selling it to the stores.
And it's the one thing the Farm Bill says. It says states can adopt more restrictive laws in their hemp programs, but the one thing they can't prohibit is the interstate transfer of hemp through its borders. Yep. And that's exactly what happened.
And this is kind of one of the things that's different, because even in those dry counties in Texas or other states, I mean, they're not criminalizing the possession of alcohol. They're criminalizing the sale of alcohol within their area. But if you look at Idaho, if you look at a handful of these other states that haven't yet conformed their criminal laws to the 2018 Farm Bill, it's a criminal issue to possess cannabis with any level of THC in Idaho. And if your hemp is hot, or even if it's not all that hot, you gonna deal with some real issues when you get caught and stopped by rural Idaho police.
Well, they're making their living on it. The asset forfeiture trailer. The first thing they ask people when they pull them over is, do you own the vehicle, or is it, is there a loan on here? And they're already investigating whether or not they want to, really dive deep onto somebody they think might be transporting. I mean, you usually see it with the ganja side of things, but it's,
and even if they stop you and it, let's say, tests under the certain amount, right? Like your certificate of analysis was right, how they sampled it. And I think we should get into sampling because that's a big question about what is the accuracy if you take one nug versus another nug.
Sure.
But, and let's say it
or
tests
one lab versus another lab.
Exactly.
I was part of the first, one of the very first test in Colorado, and the MED came to my store. They got 4 different ounces. They went, homogenized it, sent it to every testing lab in the state, and every result was different. A lot of them, there was a lot of guys in the bullseye middle that were, and some outliers, but you just it's not an exact science, even on these levels of homogenization. And I was given that straight to the health department and the enforcement guys so they could check our labs here in Colorado.
Yeah. And you weren't dealing with a situation where 0.4 is illegal, 0.2 is okay, and 0.3 is on the mark, right? So I mean, even if it tests below and they've now impounded it, you might have some issues where that stuff wasn't stored right. Your hemp wasn't stored right. It might have gone bad.
Well,
might have degraded
as the bales of CBD hemps age.
Yeah,
there's a conversion that can actually increase the THC. So what was cool today on a COA, a month later might have generated a little bit more THC. So I posted on social media that some sort of shelf that says whether it's that 1% or some number, right? Obviously, the 0.3 is so that you can't take it home and concentrate it in a home method and get THC out of the hemp. I feel like that's the big reason that they chose some number like that, right? But
I think that was pretty arbitrary back in the.
I think they were they're never going to get below.
Well, sure.
Other countries have 1%.
Yeah,
Europe's got 2%.
Israel's 0.5, right? Or no, is somebody is 0.5 and then 1%.
Yeah. And there's precedent with that. I mean, with it, I think it's kombucha where it's same thing. If you leave it out, it could become more alcoholic than the legal level.
So Justin, you're involved in hemp genetics and hemp seeds. Let's talk to the listeners about why this number happens. What the reality on the ground 0.3 is.
On the ground, 0.3 is the farmers they know that they have to pass that test to get their field out of the ground. And so there's a big, everybody's worried that genetics are going to, be hot and, are the breeders breeding it correctly, and all these things. But then there's also environmental stress level things that could affect the THC production. And you've got harvest times and all these things. But, generally you call out that you're going to harvest a field and they come and do this, take the test, the field test, and you harvest it and you have 30 days to get it down. Even that test that was at the beginning of your harvest, what's going on really 30 days later. And, as long as you got your whole crop out of the ground, you're safe. If they come back on day 31 and you still have plants in the field and they test those plants, and then you can lose the entire field if it's hot.
Fantasy story here. Yeah. I just have a fantasy story. So this, another truckload gets stopped in Idaho that is 0.4, and it could have passed the testing by the state that it came from, by the officials that came through. They tested it for and it tested 0.3.
Right.
The grower then harvested it, right? It dried, it cured, and as far as he knows, he got a 0.3 by the government. Right?
Well, there's a responsibility I'm seeing, that these guys all need to have their own gas chromatographers and be out checking their crops and checking the fields. These machines are $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. They're not that expensive when you're dealing with millions of dollars of biomass and high value CBD hemp. So, we're going to see a lot more of that because now that there's regulation, these guys, the farmers, everybody needs to, be looking maybe smaller batch sizes for testing. Or, you just look at it on a more regional level and say, it's more responsible to, process this closer to home. And in traditional agriculture, they don't like make a bunch of corn over here and then drive it across the country over here to store it in a silo. They communicate, people get together, and whether they have a co-op or, just the biggest farm can also store the smaller farm stuff. But it might need to stay a little more local and regional, even though the driving forces are going to be that it gets ramped up really fast.
Well, hey, this is a perfect time to take a break. So we're just going to break for a minute. We're going to roll some hemp up, and we'll be back at Real Dirt with Chip Baker. I have only once before seen a guest do a bong hit upside down, standing on one hand, and Andrew Livingston did that for us just moments ago.
Yeah,
it was incredible. I believe there's going to be some footage of that. Check out therealdirt.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the Real Dirt Podcast, subscribe on iTunes. The Real Dirt Podcast. Please, please, please subscribe and comment on what your favorite episode is or what you want to listen to. Today, I have my trusty co-host, Justin Jones.
How you doing, Chip?
We're doing great, man. I'm glad we're back into it here.
Exciting times.
Oh, dude, you and Shaun were kind of taking over the last part of the conversation, so I had to quit it there.
That's right.
We spoke earlier about Andrew and some of his superpower skills of projections. I'd like to start off this half of the show with just that. Dude, there's so much hype on CBD and hemp.
Yeah.
So much hype. And as a salesperson, a business person, I have to recognize when there's hype. Let's talk about what the hype is.
So the hype is that Farm Bill passed in December, and everyone's like, oh my God, hemp is completely legal. CBD is 100% completely legal. And that's just not true. I mean, it's just straight up not true. If people say like CBD is now legal, I can sell CBD everywhere, you're going to get in trouble if you try to do that. And Shaun and myself and Courtney and Corey and the other people in the hemp team
oh, wait a second. There's like 5 people now?
Oh, yeah. We're growing.
What's going on? That's why you guys looked at me a little crazy.
Yeah. When you were like
back in the old days, there was like 2 people involved. One person, then there was 2.
Yeah, we got a new one this week.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, there's, and I'm like not full-time hemp. I mean, if you really want to talk to, Shaun and then also Courtney, we look at this and it's just like, creating all of these different matrices for what is legal in this state is what is legal in that state. And I just turn this into a different map that has, red for those states that have really prohibited and haven't changed from their criminal laws, and yellow and orange all the way to, green of, yes, CBD hemp is probably legal for sale in that state. And let me just tell you, there is a lot more red and orange and yellow than there is green. And so the big hype, the thing to consider when it comes to hemp and CBD, particularly CBD products, is what are the outlets you can actually sell this through, right? Yeah. People right now, they're selling on the internet, which is, maybe you can get some sales there. Whether or not you can ship it to this, state A or state B is questionable depending upon what state you're actually in, but it's something to consider. There are plenty of good sales that have gone on the internet. The second is you're looking at these kind of like little boutique stores or essentially like tobacco shops or head shops.
You're talking like retail sales, right? Like retail individual sales. Usage sales.
Through point areas. Like,
right. I'm buying a tincture or bar soap. That's what you're, right?
You want to sell products, you need to figure out how you can get those products in front of your customers. And when you're talking about something like CBD, you're talking about a product that is very new for almost all consumers. And they may not be the ones who are searching online to look at reviews for different CBD products. That's just not something they may be comfortable with or they didn't even thought of doing. Their first entrance to seeing a CBD product might even be on the news. And then second, they're like, well, where do we get these? And they walk around and they go to a head shop, buying some glass, and they're selling CBD tinctures or CBD edibles, or maybe, they go into a tobacco store, these kind of specialty shops, they're selling some CBD products.
You got Kratom in there and some of those types of stores.
CBD right now, as far as the FDA is concerned,
is
not a certified input.
Well, we'll get into that. in a second.
Okay.
That sounds juicy.
It gets thick.
Whether or not it's a permitted food additive or dietary supplement is something that, I need to have Shaun here to talk about from the legal side of things. But let me finish for a second on the major considerations for what I'll call throughput for selling CBD products to consumers and why the hype is dangerous if you're not considering how those channels may also be changing when it comes to federal legalization and the 2018 Farm Bill. So, as I said, you got online sales, you kind of have those boutique stores and head shops. We're seeing more natural product stores. There's a handful in Oregon, I imagine. There's a whole bunch in Colorado. These sort of
chain in Oklahoma City is fucking nuts.
And the kiosk thing that just got announced with one of the big groups, small groups. There's
Barney's is going to carry.
Yeah.
So we've got more and more of these stores that are starting to sell. The question is is Sprouts Market, the big one in Colorado, going to start? Natural Grocers, I think already is selling.
Yeah, New Seasons is a big chain in the Northwest. And they're on the
already
front
selling.
end. I think so. Yeah.
So that's a great and important way to get your products to consumers. But it's also is the product that you're creating going to get on those shelves? Which, they may have different tolerances. They're going to sell tinctures, they're going to sell pills, but they might not sell CBD brownies or something like that. So that's going to be important to look at. Then the next big question, and this is where all the hype is coming from, because everyone is expecting your big box stores, your Krogers, your Walmarts, your Targets, those sorts of stores. Everyone is expecting that you're going to start seeing CBD products, edible products on the shelves in this next year. And that is a big question. And it's honestly something that Shaun and I, when we chat about, we think is less and less likely, although so many of the clients we're working with are trying to get these products approved. But they're looking at the FDA. They're looking at Scott Gottlieb and the sort of information that they are saying about what is permitted when it comes to branding of CBD. You might see full spectrum hemp oils or maybe just hemp oils on the market in some of those bigger box stores. But if something's being marketed as CBD or marketed as some sort of dietary supplement, this is where, Shaun, what's your thoughts on how that's going to shift, considering the fact that I don't think the FDA is budging, and I think it's also important to explain kind of why that's an issue.
Yeah. So I guess to back up, the 2018 Farm Bill changed the legality of hemp under the Controlled Substances Act, under criminalize drug laws. It expressly did nothing to change how food and drugs and cosmetics are regulated. And anytime you introduce a new food or a new ingredient in food into commerce, it's the FDA's job as the police chief and safety to make sure it's safe. And there's two issues with CBD. One is that there's a provision in the FFDCA that once a substance is studied as a drug and those trials are made public and or the substance was approved as a drug, then that substance can also not be legal in a food or dietary supplement unless the FDA makes an exception.
Oh.
The other issue is anytime something new is entered into the food stream or in an ingredient, unless it was recognized as safe and in the food supply prior to 1994, or unless it was otherwise, determined safe by certain requirements they require, then you have to get a determination, based on data that meets certain specifications that that substance is safe for its intended use. And then if you're going to make a claim that this substance, helps you sleep or helps with stress, that you have, data that substantiates that claim.
Let me ask you a question. So it's twofold that if you're going to make claims, but we have an issue because the CBD has already been kind of proven by study to be a medicine and a medical value.
So
with Epidiolex. So you have that. So now all of a sudden, the FDA has to make an exception for it to be a food ingredient so that Vitamin Water can put it on every shelf, every 7-Eleven, right? So if it's still being done just at a local or state level and not crossing state lines like these boutique things, is that regulated by the FDA also, or how does that work?
The FDA regulates everything that goes into interstate commerce, and the courts have historically interpreted that to be very broad. Mm-hmm. If you remember the famous marijuana case, Gonzalez v. Raich, the issue was that the marijuana grown by this patient in her farm in California, even though it was legal under state law, was federally illegal because just by her growing, she was entering something in interstate commerce.
Yep.
So it's defined as very broad, and also, most state food and drug laws are very similar.
So they line them up mostly to the FDA.
And some states like Colorado have changed it and, added provisions in their food and drug laws that say hemp doesn't make a product adulterated, and the FDA has limited resources. So more likely than not, it would be enforcement on the state level.
So to draw like an analogy to something that's being used, the kratom product. So that's nobody's ever got it proven to be medical. So it's still just in this supplement, the kratom thing. It's still.
But wasn't there an emergency scheduling that happened?
I don't think it ever happened. They want to. They're trying different things, but it's like so that because I try to like correlate, and I hear people confused about this stuff at GNC is not FDA approved and it's some sort of supplement, but it never was like officially made a medicine like Epidiolex did.
And part of what people get confused about too is, some people think dietary supplements are maybe not subject to FDA or that they're not regulated, but the difference is that they're regulated. You just don't have to get the FDA's pre-approval of your product. You have to submit a notification if you're entering a new ingredient, and otherwise, as long as you keep your substantiation on file that your product's good for stress, then you can market it without pre-approval.
Okay.
So other drugs require pre-approval, and so do certain other products.
Now, are the big guys, the big lobbyists, so if we're talking Target, Walgreens, Rite Aid, the big ones, which I think do want to get there because they're trying to find a way to interrupt the market this year, which there's just not enough CBD out there for a big market interrupter that happens before the next harvest. But what are you seeing with along those lines? With the
bigger stores.
Yeah,
I think you're right that they all want to carry CBD. They know there's a huge market for it. A lot of
their lobbyists be able to get this done? Is that the level of government interaction with someone that big to get this exemption? Or
maybe. The FDA's. And there's not just the exemption. There's different ways that CBD could be regulated, and we can have a market for it outside the pharmaceutical market. In addition to making the exception, which they've never done before for another substance, so it would be unprecedented.
That's what I was getting to. That's what I wanted to know.
The whole pharma industry would get worried about.
Yeah. And so the other thing they could do is they could say there's precedent for other substances that naturally occurring levels would not maybe be subject to the drug preclusion. So they could say something like, naturally occurring cannabinoids are okay, but if it's enhanced and isolated, it's not legal. The other thing they could do is cut it off on like a milligram level.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not taking, I take 25 milligrams a day. If I was dealing with an epileptic seizure disorder or something like that, I'm going to be taking a lot more CBD, right? On a prescription level or a, whatever level there.
Yeah, and if I want some iron to supplement my diet because I'm a vegetarian, I can go get iron as a dietary supplement. But if I'm anemic and I need a really high amount, then I get a prescription. So that's one thing they're looking at, and it's the bigger retailers and their lobbyists, but it's also pharma and their lobbyists, and it's the hemp industry. So they're talking to.
There's a really interesting issue that Shaun brings up when it comes to can you market full spectrum? Is there going to be a difference in the future? Maybe not now, but in the future between marketing of CBD isolate product versus a full spectrum hemp product. And possibly you might see a situation in which you can't market it as CBD, but you could market it as maybe something like hemp flower oil. And if it's like hemp flower oil is what it naturally is. And so the real key then is getting back into the actual genetics of producing a plant that naturally is like, a 20-to-1 or a 50-to-1 and produces a large amount.
A lot of the products I see already just say hemp oil. And then less,
that's how you sell it.
Yeah, they're not even
it's
calling it
just like the hydro industry
or whatever else.
For years in the hydro industry, we had these keywords of hydroponics and organics to the point where today in most of America, I could say I have a hydroponic store and people know it's weed. Right, and the same thing's going on with hemp.
The real places are garden centers. They're not hydro.
Totally.
And some people say too that there's maybe more benefit to having a full spectrum.
I've seen the report.
The full spectrum thing is such a marketing thing, though, right? Because you could say that, and I have seen it done, that isolate dissolved into avocado oil as a tincture, and that is listed as hemp full spectrum hemp oil.
Well, it's a full spectrum avocado oil.
Yeah, it's a
the full spectrum is important that we don't just isolate the CBD
and have all the terpenes, all the secondary compounds.
You see the COAs and you're just like, well, and the terpenes, and there's things that we should be giving our bodies that don't exist in our food supply on a terpene level as well. It was the CBGs and CBN, all these other things.
The danger in commerce, and this is what Andrew's getting to on the distillate, I think, is that currently it's almost all over this 0.3 level, right? Because like if you start off with a 0.3 hemp flower, you concentrate it, then it's gonna be higher. Right. So then they usually take distillate and then turn it into an isolate, and then the THC goes away, and then it's just an isolated compound.
And plus everyone wants to make products that are reproducible and the same.
Drop a little powder in your chocolate and it changes, right? Sure. It's easy.
But it might not be the thing you can do, because you might just have to say, we're going to deal with it from the natural product side. But let's look at it for a second of like, all right, the desire is to provide a consumer with a product that is predominantly CBD. And what may happen is that on the road of producing that from the plant, naturally producing it in its phytocannabinoids, all the way until you have an endpoint product, it's like the FDA may say you can't manipulate it in this point of the product after it is harvested to, enrich the CBD or isolate the CBD. So then what you look at is, well, cannabis is one of the most genetically modified with humans through selective breeding, the way we've been doing it.
Yeah, the natural way.
Tens of thousands of years, right? Cannabis is one of the most manipulatable plant species that we have in the entire world. And so you know what you do? You say, okay, if I can't manipulate it after harvest because isolates and other things like that may incur different type of FDA rules, there may be more opportunities on the front end to say, okay, what really matters now is consistent hemp cultivars that have high amounts of CBD and even when concentrated are safely below that 0.3% THC.
And a lot of states are doing the certified seed
program. It is. Oh, it's out there, man.
Have to be 0.3 at crude. Do you think? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm thinking like shipping, but
no, I mean I think they'll test at the harvest and then at the end product.
And in between, we don't need to worry about. You get a test on your consumer products side of things and the farm test.
I think that's how it should be. I mean, these things haven't been determined yet on the federal level, but that's precedented for other products
right. No one is getting enforcement on crude oil and distillate as I know of or have heard of.
So I'm not a kombucha drinker, and you've mentioned it. I know there's a really good correlation there. So tell me what you're saying on that with fermentation and kombucha.
I think the similarity is that if you leave it out, it has the potential to turn into something that is an entirely different
It ferments
substance.
to alcohol.
Yeah, it ferments to alcohol.
Right.
And you can only have a certain level of alcohol in a non-alcoholic drink. There's a line between what's non-alcoholic and alcoholic.
Yeah, it's like a 0.3 kind of number or whatever, 0.1.
Yeah,
for alcohol.
So if you leave it out,
and an NA beer, right? If you get a Michelob non-alcoholic beer, there's still a tiny little bit in there.
Yeah. And so there's the variance for the reason, and that for the alcohol companies, it's an issue for them because they're concerned that these people are able to market as non-alcoholic, and then
But you just go home and open it up for a day, and then you're partying on it.
So there's lawsuits around that,
and with the kombucha
I didn't know about that. No, I'm just kidding. It sounds good. I like it.
And with the kombucha too, you have a situation where, like, in the process of them creating it, it will spike above that legal limit, and as long as it is not above that legal limit when it's sold, it's fine, right?
Yeah,
so it's a perfect. So it's a perfect correlation and parallel.
Yeah, totally.
And there's precedent for regulation under food and drug laws for things like that.
Yeah. How do you remediate a full spectrum oil though if you can't change or extract or shift the ratios because of issues associated with the FDA?
Yeah. And who knows, Andrew, like what if, down the road, maybe cannabis is so unique that it gets regulated differently. Like tobacco is, if it wasn't under the FDA, it was under something different because it was so different.
Right.
So, yeah, tobacco enjoys provisions on the pesticide side of things and what they have to, divulge on what they're doing. And, they have really old laws that protect them from that. But I think everyone knows that, like, smoking cigarettes is bad for you. And, so you're not trying to, to bring this from something that everybody has thought that cannabis was this bad thing. And all of a sudden it's this good thing. And all of a sudden there's hemp. And now, we have to turn the social, machine around, or it is happening while we're doing this. But
so this has been a great episode for me. I just listen to you guys. I'm not really saying much. Right.
What do you know? You like hemp genetics.
Genetics.
What do you guys? Are
well,
the
actually, my question is
going to kill or going to slam dunk it, or is there also something where they can say without a certain ratio, CBD isn't really medicinal without a certain ratio to THC, and because in Israel, I've heard it's the same thing where they don't consider CBD a medicine unless it's paired on a certain ratio with THC. So
currently, the way most of the people are breeding hemp for CBD is for the highest amount of CBD and the lowest amount of THC, and it might be under this 1% like we're talking about, but they claim it's 0.3. There's lots of 0.6 and 7s out there, but it's legitimate that you can test it right through this growth period, and it starts to flower mid-August throughout the whole country, and mid-September, 1st of October, if you're testing it and it's below 0.3, then almost anything will pass.
Oh,
right,
so
those
harvest
0.7s, those 0.7s might not be like done till October 1st, but if you're testing your crop, then you just know when your CBD level has reached like your maximum level, and
then it's going to start creating more THC from that point on. So the optimal harvest time where your CBD's peak, there's a point after that where then it will start to go hot. So that's, and the farmers that are already doing it are doing the right thing, and they're testing, and they're being very responsible about it. But we also are going to be flooded this year with like thousands and thousands of brand new farmers that aren't, that haven't got a few years under their belt at all, and that need to, and are going to get burnt by genetics. There's big lawsuits in Oregon over genetics that failed, and
millions of dollars.
Yeah, big time
lawsuits.
So where do you think the CBD market's our price is going to drop because of the new entrants, or? Well,
I mean, it just is the curve of people that are taking it, and I have all of my parents and my in-laws and that people that are in their 70s, they're all getting on it. In Florida, the doctors are telling all of the retired people down there to start taking CBD.
And their dogs.
And we're all seeing it. And so I still think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg on the consumer level. And, like I was saying, there's this big ramp up going on. And really, everybody that I talk to says there's a few years where this thing's kind of a bubble. The profits are going to be a lot higher, like as the bottlenecks work themselves out and more farmers come online and more consumer products start to happen, because that's the issue right now. There's no big channels, right? There's just there's a farmer here, and maybe he's got a couple things here. Maybe these guys know some consumer, products people and this and that. But there's it's very broken down and a lot of operators. You'll see a conglomeration, some of that.
Well, here's some interesting math for me though, right? So on the consumer market, with the right marketing campaign, with the right moment in time, with the right YouTube energy or Instagram energy, the consumption of any product in America can double, triple. And we've seen it with everything from fidget spinners to like,
the pet rock.
I mean, so much stuff. So the thing about an agricultural crop like CBD is if the right salesperson got in there, they could literally double triple the demand in the U.S., the right set of laws, the right environment. But the agriculture side still not be
a year, 2 years.
Yeah, just need like a Kardashian.
Totally. We just need a Kardashian there. And then there's the scaling of the extraction, because right now it's still at a small scale level. Even if people doing 10,000 pounds a day, on an industrial size, that's small.
That's small. And that's
right. But you're talking about like vitamin C and everything. If you put CBD in everything, then it's a pretty big market.
And when you go and look at like the hops industry, which is another parallel, because it all comes down at the same time. They have to dry it and store it. They're also extracting hops because a lot of brewers use extracts. And so it's all the same thing. And right now up in Yakima, which is the largest hops region in the country, they're on a break on hops extraction. And so it's like the hemp guys are all in there getting their hemp extracted because the machines are so giant. You know, hemp's still kind of coming from this like, you know, ganja-based size of extractor, size of building, size, you know, all these things. And it's fine, you know, and then
homebrew
looking
style.
to these, you know, look at, this isn't Coors out in Golden, you know, this is a whole bunch of craft brews like we see around Denver.
Like Spangling right down the street.
So,
they've got two big vats.
But there
they
are
brew beer
people
in.
that have big rigs from other industries that are kind of helping. But you know, it's still.
Well, you were telling me that the big hemp growers were just waiting for the hop extractors to like be done with the hops.
There's a window in there, so there was a lot of farms that were just like, okay, you know, we're going to get our stuff in January, and you know, a lot of people are just waiting in line on their biomass also because of the bottlenecks.
If you haven't tried the New Belgium beer, the Hemper, it's hemp instead of hops because they're close cousins. It's
cool.
It's delicious.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I always say first cousin.
Lagunitas, they have several terpene beers, hemp beers. They have a THC beer now that doesn't have alcohol but tastes like beer but has the THC in it.
I got a call from some guys that are trying to take the hemp, and they wanted to do it with the ganja side. They're going to do the hemp side. They're extracting in some totally different way to get the essences to brew, and then to take to the beer brewing side. And so they're not calling it terpenes. They're calling it like this essence, and they're
That's
separating
what LaCroix calls it, I think.
And LaCroix's got something like that. So something in, and I'm not smart
ganja,
enough,
maybe.
but there's something that in that beverage world where they want these, and it's hard to get, but those exist in hemp, those compounds. So it's a good source for them. LaCroix might be going after hemp to get some.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis is
Sort
incredible.
of,
like they can do it
put in their
all.
water.
Like with cannabis and coconuts, we can have anything we wanted.
And it's also very hard to get the CBD into water soluble. It really is tough, and that's definitely. I wonder if that's something
next week's
where,
guest, that's exactly what she does, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's maybe something that, as these new products come along, where does that lie against the medical, what was it called again? Epidiolex. I always say it wrong. So where does that compare to that, where we're like, hey, this is like a Crystal Light packet. It's got some superfruit sugar in it, and I want to just, throw it in my water, and it's got 10 milligrams CBD and some superfruit sugar, and boom, so does that open more doors to
Cannabis
get an exemption or to go that direction, or to just say this is different?
Yeah.
But if they're making it with isolate, then you're now back into the wrong side.
Yeah, we got to see.
The FDA said this last week or this week that they're going to maybe change how they regulate dietary supplements in general, because there's been a lot of products mismarketed, targeted at Alzheimer's patients that don't have or contain what they purport to contain, or that are misbranded.
So now over
drugs.
time they realize, no, this really doesn't work. They'll take a step back on it from the FDA.
Yeah, or they maybe might have beef up their notification and approval requirements, or have some quality and safety standards. I don't know what they'll do. I mean, so far Gottlieb's had a lot of things he's talked about, but not much has happened yet.
And I think there's also definitely room for the FDA. Not that I would want it, to enforce. They're going to go in potentially and start enforcing on a lot more different dietary supplements. Yeah, I've been talking to some people that run forensic toxicology labs. So those are the sorts of laboratories that identify, harmful substances in various different consumer products. And they're seeing in some of these not all that reputable CBD retailers, and some of these, apparently maybe look a little more reputable CBD retailers, a lot of things that are in those products that aren't safe.
They're not on the label,
and heavy metals and things like that.
Might not even be CBD in it.
And the heavy metal side, as we're looking at traditional agriculture, my company Dank's looking at the new rules on the recreational marijuana side, with having to test for heavy metals, and looking at as we get better at testing, and as we want to test more things, and the health department wants to know more stuff. We have to look at all those things, and then the scale of CBD is huge compared to what we do in our, little, ganja companies here in Colorado. So it'll be very interesting on that side, the science side.
And if you're taking that CBD and then concentrating it, putting it to some sort of vaporizer, there's also potential issues there with, other things that were in that CBD, because when you're dealing with cannabis concentrates, there's a ratio of what is the potency of your flower, but it's still way, way higher than if you're dealing with a hemp flower and the amount of CBD. So it's like the amount of physical matter it takes to make 100 milligrams of CBD is just way more, with hemp, way more than what it takes, the physical matter to make 100 milligrams of THC with cannabis grown in Oregon or Colorado. And so that's just a lot more bioaccumulation of potential other hazards that if you're not accurately testing these products to try to ensure their safety, the FDA is going to come in, products liability lawsuits are going to come in, and it's a risk on the sector that I think that more testing needs to happen.
You guys know I love cannabis. Everybody's listening to this knows I love it. There's this dubious nature of the CBD sellers that I smell and feel, this energy of scam, right? And I'm not saying everybody out there is like that, but like as a business person, I do tons of business all throughout the cannabis sector. My scamometer comes off with CBD all the time, and there's just a certain amount that I hope it doesn't like come out and then everybody says, oh, CBD, that's a scam, or do you guys feel that?
Isn't that genie out of the bottle? I mean,
the genie's kind of out of the bottle.
I know people don't understand it, and it works differently for each person, kind of in a lot of ways. But when you reduce the inflammation in your body overall, it makes life better, and each person might be affected differently.
It has so many potential benefits, and it's, so safe that I think you're right. The genie's out of the bottle, but I think industries like this are just, when they are going from not really regulated or regulated under one way to regulated under another way, and things are kind of in flux, it's ripe for snake oil salesmen, and in the dietary supplement industry in general, you gotta know your brand, know what to look for in quality.
Well, and there's, a lot of people it's been a smaller, very small, niche, and it's like, I feel great that knowing that, Vicente Sederberg's, got a great team, and because I know what, your group has done for this plant, the last 10 years, 12 years. And, as I've been along, this ride of going from, having some cards, and doing medical marijuana and before coal, and then seeing it, go into full regulation, and then all of a sudden go from, so that's going to happen all the way through. And if anybody thinks it's not on the hemp side of things, it's, going to take a couple years. I mean, our system in Colorado, people in Oregon are like, how come the, medical marijuana and recreational is so good in Colorado? And I was, how come the system's so good? And, it's taken a long time, and people see from afar certain things where we've been in the inside going, well, it's not perfect, and those things. But, where do you guys see, beyond the FDA or the state Department of Ag's, kind of places, are they going to, really ramp up things they're doing, especially in states that weren't previously? I mean, Colorado, they're already dealing with ganja, so it's not and hemp, so it's not totally foreign. But have you heard anything about regulations changing on a more local or state level? Yeah,
we're working with a lot of states who are either adopting hemp laws for the first time, like Texas, or determining whether they're going to, or other states who are moving quick to update their programs and build out their programs so that they're eligible to be federally approved, and their farmers.
The state of Washington doesn't have anything. They have a huge rec program, right, for the plant, but I don't think they're going to be doing anything with hemp this year. Well,
it's a shame. I mean, they have a very limited hemp program, but if you are able to get a federally approved program, that means your farmers might be eligible for certain subsidies, crop insurance, and it's states are looking at it as a economic driver. And companies like Canopy just went into New York and they put a $150 million hemp industrial park, and it's 500
They're calling
jobs.
Around. Canopy's got the money, and they're definitely calling people, and they're getting in for sure.
Yeah, and for states like Texas, where it's been tough for farmers, and and everywhere with farmers with the tariffs and the trade issues. And
we talked to a farmer from Alabama on the show last week, and it was, he was definitely, there's all these guys with beautiful, perfect farmland that's been sitting there for 10 years because they can't do anything. They can't make any money. There's no money to be made on it, and they're like, they want it and need it, and they don't need to do 1,000 acres, and they're not trying to get rich, but they're like, hey, if I can just do a few acres of this, it could be a major life changer for them on their farms.
And the family farms, and people also forget to talk about the environment, but maybe we're going to have a Green New Deal one day, and a lot of states are looking at what are we going to do about plastics, and the Denver Post the other day was talking about banning straws, and what about hemp straws, and there's
I'm at the Embassy Suites, staying this weekend, and they got the paper straws, and it's nice to see that. I mean, all this plastic that we're using is, I think we can change over time, and hemp can be a big part of that type of material.
How can we revitalize that sector? Because everyone, when I was growing up and in drug policy activism, we were always talking about hemp can save the world. But we're talking about how hemp can save the world, not through CBD and its cannabinoid side of things, but through hemp bricks and hemp lotions and hemp oils and hemp
scrubs the air. It cleans the air. Like how many times better than like trees and most other plants?
How many people who are planting new hemp farms are planning it for the industrial side of things, and how many of them are
making money doing
exactly
it.
So the industry, we have to have huge. It's just like
the textile industry left the U.S. 25 years ago, and so textiles gone. Industrial hemp, fiberboard, chipboard, cement, concrete. Those are the awesome things. I think that there's great possibility for hemp, and we use plenty of stuff. The problem with plastic is you have to ship the hemp to where the plastic is manufactured, where like chipboard and concrete are manufactured all over wherever there's a forest product industry.
Right. So would a driver be if I want to build some big plant that could be a game changer for got to look at what the ethanol plants did. They didn't go put them across the country. They stuck the ethanol plants right in the middle of the Corn Belt.
Absolutely.
And so
absolutely.
Could it be reverse kind of engineered and from the top down where
I'm sure smart business people are doing that right now.
If you want to make hemp plastics, you put a giant facility right in the middle of Nebraska and have all those guys grow the type of hemp you want, whether in the strain that'll get you the right material.
Yeah, Nebraska's got a big hemp bill moving through the legislature right now.
They need it. Yeah. I mean, but they're not going to necessarily be able. They've been putting the pesticides they use to grow feed corn. They're going to have to eradicate all that farmland for years before they can grow CBD hemp.
So on the the industrial side, the seeds though for animal food and for human food,
it's the best thing you can feed the animals.
A really big possibility as the next crop, and you can look at Canada as an example. That's what all of their hemp is grown for.
Yeah, it can't be grown for CBD.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The people making money on it, it's all seeds.
That was all fiber grain. Right. That was all fiber grain Canadian strains because people are like, holy moly, Montana had 23,000 acres in 18, but it was like there was no CBD.
When I talk to the folks in Texas, I mean their number one agricultural crop is livestock, and so they're
perfect silage for livestock.
I was talking to everyone knows about Tillamook cheese out of Oregon, and that's all dairy. That whole county is like a dairy co-op, and they all have like 40 acres that they grow. Different stuff on to feed the cows all year long. So they're kind of vertical on their farm, but growing some corn, growing their hay. But back in the day, all the cows ate hemp silage, and it's like the easiest thing to grow. And you bale it up and you wrap it up with a bag and like seal it off, and it lasts all. You break a new one out when the old. It's like the perfect thing. But the crude value and the fiber value and all these things that are in hemp are so much better for our. And that's where our food's just starting now. Our milk, does it make our milk better? Yeah. It does it make our meat that we're eating better? I mean, I don't know, but it's
maybe the animals won't need so many antibiotics if.
That and what about this? We're battling. They're saying right now, and Bill Gates had a big article that I read that I was like, wow, I didn't realize that beef cows for human consumption of food would be, if they were all in one category, it would be like the third biggest, polluter if it was a country, right? Yeah. And you're like, whoa, so what if, there's hemp crops that are better at, cleaning, the air. I say that in the broadest way. Does that help if you've got 100 acres of hemp right next to your hog confinement or your big cow thing that's producing all this methane gas that's destroying, the ozone layer? What's that do?
Well, if we had some cap and trade, you might end up with a situation where there's actually subsidies for growing hemp that's pulling more things out of the air.
It's going to happen. I mean, maybe not that to that degree, but like,
well, that's where it can go, though.
For remediation for land, right? Like, I mean,
but you don't want any of that to be put into CBD oils or things like that. Because
just like, oh, we've got all this bad land.
Hemp is a great plant to remediate the ground for
then,
sure. But so the some of these Midwestern places, that if they haven't been certified, if they're not organic already, if the property's not organic, could take 3 years to remediate the soil. And all those farmers know what they've been sticking in that soil. And it's all the same things that, years and years ago, all the ganja guys were getting busted for around here. That's all traditional ag types of, things. So
say you have people calling. I mean, you say you have more and more people calling. Like, do you have like a number one question people are asking for hemp, or like a direction people like are frequently going? Is there some generalization you can make to me there?
Yeah. I mean, a common question is, can I sell CBD in all 50 states? But in general, people are looking to develop or retail sell, a CBD product.
So the legal side of things really, seems to be more on the consumer products and shipping that stuff across lines. And what kind of stores is that?
Yeah. I mean, and, commercial contracts between suppliers and just helping people make sure they're compliant and have their registration
contract stuff that's going around. That's so I mean, I'm hearing about that too, and I'm sure obviously needs to have really good legal going on, legal opinions and everything else being done for the design of that.
A lot of work on the FDA front, and people wanting to know what type of research and product development to do to position themselves for compliance. And I find that people really all care about quality and safety, which is great.
Well, they just saw all those
people
products
wanted to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing.
There was all these products they've been back tested in Florida that just like don't even have CBD in it, and they haven't been so that's. You'll have that. That's those guys you were talking about that were snake oil in it.
Yeah, totally. So I want to get a couple more specific predictions, since you were so awesome last time, Andrew.
Okay.
Give me some specific predictions on production. Can you do that? On like where the hemp industry is going to go?
I think that we're probably going to see within each of the states that exists for cultivating hemp, and it's going to be predominantly dominated by 5 or 6 big ones: Colorado, Oregon, Kentucky, maybe Montana, maybe Texas if it passes this law in the future. I know there's just so much land there and so much interest.
California's a little kind of in that pack somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's a little bit more behind based on what you can sell and create in California. But all right, so I think that in each of those states, you're going to see every year for the next 3 years more than a doubling of the hemp that was grown there the year before. So you're going to see this really fast cultivation throughout the entire country. And I think that there's going to be a lag of time between all of that cannabis that is going to be grown and processed into CBD and the outlets for it to be sold. I don't think you're going to get the big box stores, your Walgreens, your Target, your Walmarts to start selling a CBD product or even full spectrum hemp oil products as quickly as all of the cultivators and the processors are planning on. So what you're going to have is a massive drop in the wholesale price of CBD distillates, which is probably going to potentially happen faster than the wholesale drop in crude full spectrum hemp oil. And I think that's going to be because some of the differential in the perception of legal risk between those. That's going to drop down these prices considerably, and you're going to see then a relatively quick, maybe a year or two after everyone starts realizing this, a drop in the number of people actually cultivating that hemp. So I would say that you're going to see a big spike up, and then within 5 years, we're going to see a big decline in the amount of people that are growing hemp for CBD. Now, the question is, do they switch over to seed, or do they do something that's maybe a hybrid of the two? They'll grow a cannabis hemp product, and then they'll see whether or not it'll be good for CBD based upon that market, and they'll test it. And if not, they'll let it seed all the way out, and they'll press it into seed oil, the actual hemp seed oil that we've been, seeing in normal supermarkets across the country for a long time.
Well, sure. And that's been legal. Once you sterilize the seed, you can ship it here and press it here.
So I think that stuff's in shampoo.
It's been around for a long time.
I do agree with you. It's going to boom on CBD, and then the infrastructure for so much of the industrial stuff, the seed pressers, right?
And that's what takes a little longer to come together.
Yeah, that takes a little longer to come together, and then I feel like that is a good flow of things.
On a more micro level, you're saying that kind of over a 5-year period. What in the next 18 months? Kind of talked a little bit about. Some of these companies definitely are trying to want to get in and do a market interruption, be first to, what do you think is going on between, right now and, the 2020 harvest?
It's hard to know because, as we discussed at the start of the podcast, a lot of it has to do with channels and where you're selling. But I think you're going to start seeing the input price drop for distillate and for full spectrum hemp oil in these products. And that's going to drop faster over the next 2 harvests than it will at the retail price. So profit margins for some of these big hemp oil or hemp dietary supplement and these other sorts of things, those profit margins are going to increase as the input drop in price as more supply comes on. Then I think that's going to create more and more interest, although there already is, for the creation of these new products, because people are we've started to get some details and some data and stuff like that, and they're going to see some of these companies really start making a lot of money. Some of them that are publicly traded are going to start, seeing, they're going to put out some mid-quarter reports or, quarterly reports and things like that look really good. And that's going to drive up the development of these new products. And they're going to come to Shaun and I and Courtney and other people in the hemp department of Vicente Sederberg. And they're going to say all right, all these people are making good money, at least good profit margins, even if their volume isn't as fast as they were expecting. And they were going to jump in. And then there's just going to become a crowded market with few channels, and the whole price category is going to start dropping further, and you're going to start seeing retail price drops. I mean, a lot of these sorts of natural products, if you were to go into those aisles, a pill bottle of 20 of whatever is really expensive. You're ending up 20, 30, but some of these hemp products, these CBD products, are another 50% higher than that. So they're going to start dropping down, I think, closer to that $20 to $30 a bottle, not less. And then that's going to, it's hard to know what's going to happen after that. But that's my guess on the trajectory of trends.
I got an easy one. Will somebody take a CBD product onto the Shark Tank in the next 12 months?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Probably. I'm sure there's stuff already in line right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I keep wondering. I'm like, now, things change.
Well, the question is would they invest?
Yeah.
Well, will they ask the right questions when it comes to how legal is this product? What are the ways to do it? The other thing too is the Federal Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act. Second to last word there is cosmetics.
Yeah.
What's the future? Or Shaun, what's your thoughts on the future for weed cosmetics? With hemp cosmetics, is it easier to do that than dietary supplements?
Topicals are way easier to do.
Yeah, from a legal perspective, there's a lower standard of approval.
You're not consuming it internally.
Is that and so right? Is the Cosmetics Act? So FDA regulates stuff that we put inside our body. The cosmetics part of that is we put on top of our body.
Yeah,
or devices that you inhale.
Oh, okay. So the cosmetics side does. The devices that you inhale? Or?
Oh, no, that's just another category.
Another category. So on the cosmetics, is that, the hand lotion I got at the Holiday Inn, is that regulated under the cosmetics all the way to wrinkle cream and stuff making claims, right? Those are, okay.
Yeah. And there's different standards, and
these people want to make claims with CBD. Revlon, if they're going to put it in their wrinkle cream, they want to make a claim, right? That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to get there with on that end of things?
Yeah, but you can sell stuff without making the claim, though. So a huge amount of stuff.
But if
sure,
they're able to substantiate,
but they want to be, like I said, I feel like these guys want to get to marks.
Well, I said the CBD preclusion for Epidiolex it applies to food and dietary supplements, so it doesn't apply to cosmetics.
Okay.
So if you wanted to make a cosmetic and you could, in order to make a claim, you have to just substantiate that you've tested the product and it is actually effective for what you purport it to be. If you're able to do that research, you can make that claim.
Is that one of those? I mean, this is just like light bulb right now. But is that one of those situations that if one of those companies starts doing testing for cosmetics, that other people can't make the claim? Is it the sort of same dynamic with Epidiolex that like you can't make a new CBD product easily?
No, it's just if if you're making a claim, you have to prove that the product can actually do that.
Does any of us know here whether or not the major topical companies are doing research?
The whispers on the street is that everybody, all of the big guys in the skincare and cosmetics and all that into things are, and I mean that's the one thing I hear more anything.
The supplement industry and the
like,
cosmetic industry have been for years filled with underground magical substances that make you young and beautiful and fit and energetic and sleep, and a lot of it is magic, but some of it's for real, man.
Yeah, and they don't have to have pre-approval, so you market something, and unless they're not going to just target you for no reason.
Well, like I was just talking to somebody that had these bath bombs, and I guess that's like a CBD hemp bath bomb can be one of the most. Have you ever tried one of those? I haven't done it yet. We've got really a couple. Yeah. But like I've heard it's like one of the most relaxing things
James
you can do.
Medicinals has one on the THC side, and it's pretty great.
Those companies that have come from the ganja side and have gone into the hemp side because they've got the technology like Mary's and stuff. It's really cool to see all that also.
Yeah, and there's, other cannabinoids, so who knows what happens with...
Okay, so do people care as much about the other cannabinoids if it's in my soap? Like, how can it change?
Hemp essential oils?
Like, can maybe a full spectrum
the body
could
shop.
be used in a topical or a soap or something that, I
mean, definitely on things like psoriasis. Now, that gets closer to actually like a topical medicine, but, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities, people who have dry skin... And, having CBD for things like that, like we first need to figure out, like, does it work? But I would love to have some sort of CBD shampoo, particularly earlier before I think we started recording, we were talking about how dry it is in Colorado.
Yeah.
No, and it's definitely CBD's proven, and I forget the term, to be good for your skin, and it kind of rejuvenates. And it's
good for your skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's official.
I like
that endorsement.
Yeah, well,
Shaun says it's good for your skin.
It's good for you.
Yeah. It is good for you. CBD is good for you. You guys have just been chatting it up. I felt like I've just been absorbing, knowledge over here. I hope my listeners have gained as much like information over this past episode. If there's people out there interested in hemp and want to get in touch with you or follow you guys somehow, is there a way that happens?
Our emails are just our first names at VicenteSederberg.com. So shoot us an email anytime. Check out our website.
Shaun at VicenteSederberg.com and Andrew at VicenteSederberg.com.
Yeah, or come through the normal VS intake process because Shaun gets way too many emails. Although I would say email both of us.
So is that on your website where I could go and click on fill out a form, get in queue to get a call back from you guys? Is that what you're saying? Versus, so that's the best contact.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are interested in hemp business, in the legalities of hemp, I 100% give Vicente Sederberg and the whole crew there, because it's not just one person, but Shaun and Andrew, you guys have helped so many people, and you're so knowledgeable, and there's no arrogance or bullshit, or you guys speak like normal people, and like you guys are great. So if you need help in some manner, if you're interested in some manner, these are the people to talk to.
I second that.
Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you for joining me, guys. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
thanks,
co-hosting has been fun. Great, Chip.
Yeah.
And it's you really know how to bring people together and get the information out there. And thanks for doing this podcast. I mean,
it's going to be awesome, man. Hemp, hooray, man. I just get so excited about it.
Me too.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Well, thank you also for listening to another episode of The Real Dirt. If you'd like to download this episode or others, please go to therealdirt.com. You can also check us out on iTunes, The Real Dirt Podcast. Please, 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 please subscribe. And don't forget, stay high.